Welcome to the Dark Mind Podcast. Friends and familiars, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dark Mind Podcast, where we explore the boundless realm of dark literature and film. On today's show, I'm joined by three authors whose backgrounds and writing styles are as diverse as their stories are haunting. They're joining me today to discuss the latest short story anthology by Water Tower Hill Publishing entitled Hospital of Haunts. So without further ado, join me as we delve into the dark insight of Joshua Lloyd Fox, Jason Daughrity, and Caleb Jones. All right, friends and familiars, we are live on YouTube, Twitch, and X with three of the 23 brilliant authors featured in the newly released short story anthology, Hospital of Haunts, published by Water Tower Hill Publishing. Joining us are Joshua Lloyd Fox, Jason Daughrity, and Caleb Jones. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Vincent, how are you, sir?
Doing well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me on this 8th day of October 2024. I thoroughly enjoyed having Heather Daughrity on, along with two authors from the previous collection entitled House of Haunts. So I'm really excited to interview the other half of the Water Tower Hill publishing team, Joshua Lloyd Fox, along with two authors from the new collection, Hospital of Haunts. So thank you to all three of you gentlemen for taking the time out of your schedules to join me on the show.
Happy to be here.
Pleasure.
So the book is about a haunted institution called Lychhurst Hospital, which over the years has taken on many iterations. A medical retreat for the wealthy, an army hospital during the Civil War, a sanatorium treating tuberculosis patients, a psychiatric hospital, a so-called normal hospital, and in the end, it was abandoned, left to become the stuff of urban legends and curious exploration. So, Josh, as the publisher, what was the submission prompt for the short story collection? And were you surprised in any way by some of the author's interpretations? And if so, could you give us some examples?
Yeah. Hey, Vince, thanks for having us. As you said last year, you interviewed my wife, Heather, who's the editor of the anthologies. And to answer your question, the way we set this up, and because of the way the anthologies work, they have to be invite only. And we usually invite people we know are good writers, that play well with others, because it's a very intuitive, intermixed project. And because of that, and the iterations of editing and such, we really work with people that, we're close with and know pretty well. And so when we came up with the HOH anthology idea, and we have 13 of them planned. We kind of knew Lychhurst. We kind of figured that out. We figured out the wards first, and then we sent out invitations to 24, 25 people, because we don't always assume everybody's going to be able to make it. And the people who did responded well. And Heather, bless her heart, was really kind enough to let me bring family and Water Tower Hill people more into this one than maybe House of Haunts, because I wanted, like my brother Jason, to have a writing credit and stuff. So the biggest surprise was my brother's story, because like I said, it was the first one he'd ever written, and it knocked me out of my seat. But everybody else played to their strengths. We kind of knew what we were getting with a lot of them. especially the bigger names. We knew that they were fantastic and would work well with us. So my brother's story is the one that surprised me the most, Jason. Jason, you did a fantastic job with the burn unit. And then having Water Tower Hill family members in the anthology was just special to me as well.
Yes, I second that. Very dark, Jason. Very dark.
Not my usual sunny side disposition, but it did give me a chance to exercise something that's been in my mind and rolling around for a long time. So thank you very much, Josh. Love you, brother. Appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this amazing book.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, so Josh, you wrote the architectural representations of the House of Haunts. I remember talking to Heather about that. So I'm assuming you also wrote the ones for the Hospital of Haunts as well. So what architectural elements do you find most effective in conveying a sense of horror or unease?
So the hospital itself is a main character throughout the anthology. And I've been told I wasn't in the horror community, certainly not an anthology community until I met Heather. And these are her brain children. I just kind of knew the logistics of creating a book, right? And as a publisher. And when she showed me her hand drawn rooms kind of sketched out for House, it was actually my idea to put that into the book because I'm a fantasy guy, and every fantasy has a world map or a city map or something. And I like the idea of, as you're reading a story, going back and forth. And so I took her hand drawn kind of sketches of the floors of House of Haunts and the grounds, and I have a CAD drawing program. I'm an engineer by trade. Okay. And just knocked those out. Everybody seemed to really enjoy it. Almost every review talked about it. So I knew with Hospital, we needed to up the ante a little bit. We needed to make them even better. And so between me and our in-house artist, Susan Roddy at Water Tower Hill, we took an old image of the hospital we based this book on. It's in Connecticut. And we got one of its original 1840 floor drawings, kind of took everything out of it and made each floor its own kind of spooky setup. And then she did the bottom floor, the basement, and the tunnels herself by hand. And then I took that graphic, put it into the old kind of style framing that we use for House. And the other thing I wanted was a front elevation of the hospital itself with the wards kind of listed out. Just and we aged the pictures and we put them in there. And again, people are really talking about it. So it's CAD drawings. It's some playing with old images and then putting it into an antique kind of frame and then putting that in as an entire image. So it's a multi-tiered process, but I feel like there's now no way we can ever not do this. it's literally everybody talks about it. Josh Mallerman and Clay McLeod Chapman talked about it in their forwards. And so we're going to have to keep upping that ante, Vince.
Absolutely. Just out of curiosity, which hospital was it?
So it's a Connecticut Valley Mental Hospital from the 1840s. It's in Connecticut. It's still around. It's still being used. But we took some of the original architectural drawings and floor plans and blueprints of it as inspiration for Litchhurst. And then we put Litchhurst in the wilds of West Virginia, and you get Hospital of Haunts.
Yeah, let me see here. My browser's acting up. So Connecticut State Hospital,
Connecticut Valley,
Milton?
Connecticut Valley. Yep, it's the one below it, the Connecticut Valley Hospital.
This one right here. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so we added some elements to it because we didn't want to completely rip it off. But yep, as you can see, we increased the tower size on the front, but the rest of it kind of stayed the same. And then if people are watching the video, I can show the architectural drawing. If you can see them, we wanted a front facing element there in like an old classic 1840s kind of look. And then the floor plans, super creepy kind of. Each ward is a lot is shown there. And as you read each story, you can go to its ward. And we also play with the ones that are next to it, knockings and apparitions. And then the bottom floor with the basement and the tunnels and the secret lavatory and the morgue and stuff. And I think because most people in the horror world don't get floor plans and maps and stuff in their books, I brought kind of that element from the fantasy world, which is my bread and butter. But literally everybody who reads it talks about having floor plans. So there's no way we can ever not now do this.
Yeah. Yep, you have set the bar, sir. Just keep on going.
We're really excited about next year, Hotel of Haunts. We've already found the hotel. We're patterning it on. It's an old 1700s hotel in New York. We're moving it out to California. We changed the name of it. We're basing it on the Hotel Cecil in LA, which is like the most haunted hotel in the world. And we're calling it the Hotel Ethel. And we'll play with that.
Isn't that the one where the woman was found dead on the roof or something like that? Yeah,
in the water tank. And she did the weird stuff in the elevator pictures. So I knew the Cecil. I've watched the documentary and stuff, but Heather didn't want like a high rise hotel like that one is. So we found one that's like 20 stories, turn of the century, 18th century in New York. And we put that cover out now. Lindy Ryan will be writing the foreword on that one. #1 female horror writer of 2024. So we're blessed with who we know and who wants to work with us. So we're really excited about next year's as well. But we were just answering. We were on NBC News this morning, and they were asking about the logistics and the process, because it has to be a process with a book like this with so many elements and the tour through it and stuff. Several rounds of edits, getting the authors in the same chat, all talking to each other for months, right? And so, like Gage Greenwood put grackles in his story, so we would reach out in the chat and be like, "Hey, who wants to put grackles in theirs? Who can fit it in?" And so, because I run Water Tower Hill as a family, and Caleb can attest to this, I make them all talk to each other. I make them become friends, and we've set real lifelong relationships at Water Tower Hill, because my business culture is as a family, and a rising tide lifts all ships. So they all support each other. They post each other's stuff, and we've taken that into this anthology, and I make them all join me in my way of doing this. So they talk to each other too, and we give news and we give updates, and I'll put the floor plans in there as I finish it, or we'll put, like, even now it's done, but we hit #1 last night on horror anthologies on Amazon, so we put that in the chat and let everybody share it, and we want to continue that throughout all of these, as well as building Water Tower Hill. It's the only way I know to run a business, and it seems to be it seems to be working.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, let me ask you a little bit about your story. The story is entitled The Highest Stakes Game and is about a man named Jeb Watson who was erroneously diagnosed with tuberculosis when in actuality he had lung cancer. And he was a veteran of the Civil War, and I was going to say tough as nails, which I'm sure he was, but also salty as hell. So he decided that he was not going to go anywhere regardless of death. He was going to stay right there in the hospital. So could you describe your conceptualization of the afterlife in your story and how it relates, if at all, to your own belief?
Yeah, it's a great question, by the way, Vince. It's actually been on my mind almost all day. I will tell you, first off, I wanted my story to be the more humorous one of the book. Now it's very dark and it ends dark, but there's funny lines and elements. And if you read it in like that deep Southern Kentucky voice in your head, and I write it kind of that way too. I did want it to be a little bit more of the humorous story. I didn't get a chance to do that in house. My story in house was incredibly serious. And so, Jeb Watson is like, well, damn it, I ain't going nowhere, and he decides to stay there. And he knew if he stayed around long enough, somebody else might decide to stay there too. And the first thing he said, well, other than, hey, your innards are showing, he says, do you fancy a poker game? And so they start playing poker. And as the years go by and more people join, they start betting on who's going to die around them in the cancer ward. And Jason and I lost our father to cancer when we were 8 and 9 years old. And part of the, it's always cathartic now that I'm a writer and I've written several books about my own life. Well, elements of my life in all my books. I feel like I've therapeutically gotten past that to where I can laugh about cancer now. But cancer changed Jason and I's entire trajectory of life. We grew up in an orphanage. And so I think one of the things I really wanted to make it a light thing, a poker game in the cancer ward, but also to kind of personally understand that maybe when you lose somebody, they're not always completely gone. I am a believer in Christ. I'm a Christian, and I believe that even if you're not, that's okay. But there is something. I think we don't. I think we know a fraction of real reality and in history and things. And I write an entire fantasy series that takes place in both the spiritual realm and the material realm, and they intermix a lot. And I'm married to a woman who believes in ghost stories and loves spooky horror books and stuff. So the question you asked is, does it correlate with my beliefs? I think when I go, I want to retain my sense of humor or even my saltiness, and I think writing that as the more humorous story of the book. I think there's one line. I know there's one line that's my favorite line, and I said it the other day. He's sitting across from a woman called Tin Cup Debbie, who's from like the Roaring 1920s, and she's just like almost completely dead hair, just kind of weird, and she's wearing a flimsy dressing gown, and she has one breast out, and he goes, damn it, Debbie, stick your tit back in, we've seen it. and I have now said that out loud on so many different things. Is, damn it, your tit's sticking out, put it back in. But
can't have
but
any
as you
errant
get
tits.
as you get through the stories, and there's some very dark, horrible stories, because you're talking about medical stuff here, right? Doctors doing bad things and ghosts doing bad things. I really wanted the story of the ghost of the cancer ward to have maintained that Kentucky salty humor. And then he started getting jealous, and then he started getting addicted to winning and stuff. And I played a lot on almost humanizing the spiritual experience, right? And you're right, as you said, he definitely maintains and retains a lot of that into death.
Yeah. Yeah, and you alluded to the fact that they were playing cards and that evolution. The ones that are confined to the hospital, at least, play a game of poker where the currency is in the form of soul chips. So essentially, and I think I have this right, essentially one chip holds the player's soul. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're basically it holds their decision to stay in this purgatorial poker game.
Okay. And so whoever wins the hand gains the player's soul. Is that correct?
Yep. And it almost for a few seconds feels like it's a euphoric, almost alive feeling again, because they absorb that energy into themselves. And as I wrote it and I was trying to figure out exactly what it would be like, it would be almost like taking a hit of your favorite drug or whatever as an addict. And these ghosts can start getting addicted to it. So like Jeb starts cheating he starts killing off the ones he's betting on and stuff. And his abilities to not only create the poker game in this purgatorial hellscape of the hospital, but also to be able to control and become the cancer of the cancer ward. He becomes insidious where he starts killing off the people dying of cancer in the ward and thereby absorbing more of the players' souls. And he becomes this big dark entity towards the end because he becomes addicted to it. And then I played on a lot of obviously, fantasy tropes of gaining spiritual powers from absorbing other spirits and being able to kill people in the material world, and they can all kind of almost see him. The one very close to death can almost see the game going on. And I really wanted to play on that back and forth juxtaposition because I'm assuming as you get close to death, that we've seen a lot of people, on their deathbed seeing things we can't see, right? They say, do you see the light? Do you see the angels? Do you see this little girl standing here? And I did a lot of dark research into that as I was writing this story. And I had I had 4,000 to 6,000 words to do this in. I feel I killed it pretty well, knock on wood. But yeah, I did. I cannot fully be a horror writer. I have to put fantastical elements in it because I'm a fantasy writer first.
Mm-hmm.
He was so excited when he called me about it to tell me about this card game. And I just kept thinking of all the card games he and I used to play up in Maryland together, and around the poker table. I'm very proud of that story, Josh. You did fantastic.
I used to tell Jason that his sword was out and he needed to put it back in.
Well, I mean, if you're at a card table, sometimes you just got to flop it on the table,
Sometimes you got to air your stuff out, right?
Well, as you kind of alluded to, Jeb's progression to kind of becoming the embodiment of cancer and all the pain and suffering that came with it, do you see Jeb as a tragic figure, or is there something darker at play in his transformation? And how does that challenge the reader's sympathies for him?
Yeah, I think my wife told me that her favorite line of the entire story is the opening paragraph, where it talks about what he looks like, what he sounds like, who he is, and then he was dying. And I think that as being alive, he never fully accepted dying and dying painfully. And he had dodged so many bullets in the Civil War, literally and figuratively. He wasn't about to let this sickness in his lungs do him in, right? And so he made a decision with whoever was listening that he was just gonna, whether he died or stayed alive, he was gonna stay right there. And I think the line right after that was, and then Jeb Watson died that night. And I think because he hadn't accepted his own death, he didn't come to terms with it, and he was a salty son of a bitch anyway. I think you want to feel sorry for him, and then you laugh because he says some really funny lines. Like when Goodman, I can't remember his name, but the kind of his alter ego, the good guy, he's in surgery when he dies, and he comes in, and the first thing Jeb said is, "Hey, your innards are showing," right? And they are. And the guy looks at him and goes, "Well, hell, they are." And then Jeb says, "You want to play a game of poker?" And you want to like him there, but then as he gets addicted to winning and he starts getting the powers of controlling both the material and the spiritual, and everybody's afraid of him, I think he 100% personifies what I see cancer as, because cancer is your own body, your own cells mutating and turning against you. And I wanted to make sure people understood that Jeb became like cancer. He had started the poker game. We liked him. He was funny, but then he started really being addicted to winning. And then as his powers grew and he started killing everybody off, and at the end, you see he's the only one left, and the hospital has crumbled down. It's 150 something years later. And I think I ended it with, nobody could beat old Jeb Watson, the greatest poker player who ever lived and died. I wanted to end it on that funny note because it got so incredibly dark right before that. But I wanted the reader to know that Jeb became the personification of how I see cancer.
Gotcha. Well, it's a great story, but I wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit about a book that I saw in your bibliography. It's actually an autobiography, from what I can tell, entitled "I Won't Be Shaken."
Yeah, you're going to get me on the soapbox here. And so everybody who knows anything about what I've done the past 5.5 years, and my brother was literally there with me when this happened. So 6.5 years ago, I was in the deepest, darkest part of my of this tragic life. Started out bad, lost our parents, ended up in an orphanage, and it never felt like I never fully came into the sunshine of my life. And I had just left a really emotionally bad relationship. I was down in Florida with my brother, and that was bad enough. Not being with my brother, but leaving my family, kind of my life down there, and then I literally lost like my girlfriend, my job, and my apartment in the same week.
What week? Yep.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And so
Jesus.
I attempted to unalive myself. And I was saved by a phone call to my best friend and then a phone call to my brother. And my brother literally came over and hit me as hard as he could in the back of the head. I'm not even joking. This is what a big brother does. You tell him you were about to unalive yourself, that you'd actually attempted it, and he hit me so hard in the back of the head and was like, "You idiot, what would I do without you?" kind of thing. And of course, nobody thinks about that.
And then I think I took you to get ice cream and we watched a movie, if I recall.
Ice cream and go to the movies like we were kids or something. Yeah. So anyway, I've always wanted to be a writer. I wrote for my high school newspaper a little bit. I had an English professor that told me I had the gift early on in life, but I never really did anything with it. So, Jason, what was it? I borrowed your little word processor about 2 or 3 days after that.
It was a little Chromebook. Yeah, it was a little Chromebook.
Yeah, little Chromebook. And Vince, to tell you the truth, I started writing basically what I considered my suicide note to my children, was just my life. Like, I didn't want my children to think it was their fault that they had anything to do with it. And as we've told you already, we lost our parents. We were young. My mom was 36 years old. Jason and I have already outlived my mother by more than a decade. And my father was young too at 63. So, I didn't want my kids to have the same leftover feelings that I know Jason and I have had our whole adult life. So, Vince, I started writing my own story, just the easiest story you can write. And it took me about 4 weeks to get it all out. And I actually caught up in the book with where I was in life right there. And I tell people this all the time. When I wrote The End, even though it was my own story, it literally changed everything. T.D. Jakes says, until you have the taste of finishing, you'll never respect yourself. And so I hit the end. I actually felt like I had accomplished something that could even live past me. And then I sat on it for a year and I started writing my next book. And a year later, I pulled Shaken back out, read over it, kind of wrote an epilogue of what had happened in that last year and the lessons I had learned. I put some resources for people that were suicidal, and I got in between. I got diagnosed with CPTSD, and I wanted to shine a spotlight on that. So there's a lot of resources and websites and stuff at the end of that book. And then I titled it "I Won't Be Shaken: A Story of Overcoming the Odds," and that started this whole thing. I mean, in ways you can say it started where us even being here right now. It led up to, obviously, life is a journey, and here's the newest, step.
Absolutely. Jason, I wanted to get to your story, but first, if maybe I can get all of your, assuming all of you went, experience at the recent Scares That Care Author Con. Did all 3 of you make it there?
Unfortunately, no. That was Josh, Heather, and your son Nate, correct? Josh?
Okay.
Yeah, but they were all represented.
All right. Well, he was repping hard. All right.
Oh, yeah. Did fantastic job there.
Yeah, no, we had a great, it wasn't the greatest turnout because it was the first time in St. Louis. I think St. Louis didn't really know about it. I think next year will be better. But amazing authors, amazing time. We sold really well. Because of that, Hospital of Haunts hit #1 on Amazon last night. So yeah, it was always a fantastic time to hang out with people like Clay and Malfi and Rebecca Rowland and Triani and stuff, and to know those people personally. Heather and I have just been incredibly blessed. So I was able to take my son Nathaniel, who's 24 and just out of the military, and he probably sold more of our books than we did. He worked the room. I've never seen anything like it. I've now hired him on full time to run our sales department at Water Tower Hill.
Nice.
But it also helped him as my son to see where I've come in the last 5.5 years with Water Tower Hill and the books. I don't want to toot my horn, but people kind of know what we're doing. The word's kind of out there. And for my son to go up and people ask, like, well, what have you written? He's like, oh, I'm Joshua Lloyd Fox's son. He got pleasure that their eyes would light up and they're like, oh, I know him. I know his books. And then my son kind of vicariously had a little bit of fame himself. So, and then he just worked the room. The kid has real ability to talk to anybody, make anybody comfortable, and sell a book and bake goods. My wife baked for 4 days leading up to that, and we handed out cookies and brownies, all kinds of stuff every single day we were there. So, hell of a good time. Cannot wait for Williamsburg. We're going to have 2 tables out in the promenade there, and then we will have more Water Tower Hill family there. Quite a few of them, actually.
Gotcha. Very nice. Well, Jason, your story, The Custodian, was dark. It gave me the same kind of vibe as the beginning of that movie, 7 Days. Have you ever seen that?
Is that the French one where he tortures the guy for 7 days for killing his daughter?
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely a little darker than I had intended it to be, but yeah.
Well, it was awesome. I really dug it. It's about the custodian of Litchhurst Hospital named Frankie, a very unassuming name, and his duties cleaning the burn unit, which treats both adults and children, and of course is swarming with the ghosts of the departed, as unfortunately most severe burn victims don't survive. So morally gray characters are always interesting, but Frankie was way darker than gray. If the story was in a longer form, what kind of backstory would you give him?
Well, Vince, I first wanted to tell you thank you very much for having us on this show. It's been just such an honor to watch Josh in the last few years and build his company from literally just an idea that he had into what it is, and to be a part of it is phenomenal. When he gave me a call, he said, Jason, we're writing a book about a haunted hospital, and you've got that medical background, and you've been wanting to write forever. Can you get us a story? And I said, well, I'm going to blow your socks off, kid. And
hold my beer.
And Josh had a lot of input on the story as well. I had originally had a different ending, and we had some talks at length and changed the ending a bit there. But yeah, Frankie minus the predator aspect is Josh and I's uncle, Uncle Travis. I mean, yeah, literally from the $4 haircut, $1 for each corner, to the overalls, the unassuming nature. I really wanted to just kind of flesh him out a little bit, so you really get an idea of who it is in your mind before we got to the darker aspects of his personality. He just, I don't know. I've always had that character in my mind for an authoritative figure, definitely a 1950s type character, and the story takes place in the burn unit in 1954. There are ghosts there, but in Frankie's perspective, he's actually seen real live people as ghosts, whereas he's actually the one that's in the purgatory there, and as a ghost, as he finds out, much to his chagrin, a little bit later on. I just wanted somebody that the audience could literally see in their mind, connect with, and then be totally repulsed by reading what happens to him, and kind of thinks good what happened to him in that story.
Yeah, and you were very particular about the olfactory senses when it came to the physical description of Frankie. You mentioned the smells of cigarettes. I don't even know what Vitalis is, and aftershave. So this was related to your uncle, you said? Kind of the same thing?
Yeah, and even though Uncle Travis wasn't a smoker, he was a Air Force veteran and just a very unassuming man, very quiet. The Vitalis, I did some research into the 1950s, and I was thinking of how he would have received his punishment and gotten injured. And I really want to... I kind of took a page from some of my favorite authors, like George R. R. Martin. Why am I drawing a blank there? Josh, help me out there. Brandon Sanderson, right?
Yeah, Sanderson.
Some of the characters that I've always read, I always felt like when you had a particularly well fleshed out character, it not only described what they look like and what their personality was like, but you attack all the senses and you really spell it out. And if you describe the smells to somebody, there's such a deep connection that people have in their brains to intense memories and remembering stuff. One of the key components of andragogy, which is the study of how people learn or how adults learn, is using all the senses. And if you can smell that character, you can see that character in your head, I feel like.
Yeah. Interesting.
Can I just interject here? This is the first thing this man has ever fully written. Like, he's got a lot of ideas for books and stuff, fantastic ideas. But he knew instinctively to not tell all the secrets up front. Writers don't tell their secrets up front. He described, through the senses first. He showed, he didn't tell. Jay, you've got to write. Like, you've got to write. Now, obviously, we went through the editing process with Jason. My wife is a world-class editor, and to Jason's credit, like most first-time writers, you get a little taken aback by developmental edits and stuff. But Jason doesn't know this, but Heather and I argued over how to actually finally develop his story. And Heather's idea was brilliant, but I didn't want to take away my brother's voice. Right. And the way he wrote that story and the way he set it up with like this falling mop halfway through as just as a sound and physical prop, but it was a story break in like two different ways. It was like a story break in the material and a story break in the spiritual. And he knew how to do that as a beginning writer, and boy's got chops, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, Josh and I have been comparing stories, writing, talking about our different books that we both enjoy. We both are avid readers. I think we talk more about books and writing in our past, growing up together at the boys' home and playing off of each other for a lot of. We would entertain ourselves every night with stories and funny skits and everything else, and it was just it just seemed like a natural progression for me.
Yeah. And he mentioned, not telling the secrets up front. And as the story progresses, you find out that Frankie committed a horrific act. And it's alluded to at the beginning, but then spelled out graphically towards the end. So were you aiming for shock, catharsis? What did you envision for the reader?
Definitely coming to your own conclusions about what Frankie was going through, how he didn't look at bed 5. He, had his own opinions about what happened to the burned girl, what happened to the burned old lady. And just basically in his own mind about what he was doing. Even the fact that he couldn't touch the ghosts that he saw was an important factor, because he was trapped in his outside of his burned body there in the burn unit, and he deserved to be punished. And the reader, as you go through it, you kind of get that revulsion and that gut check, and you're just like, man, I'm glad this guy gets what he gets. But the people there at the hospital, as the parents of the girl, they finally realized what had happened. But the nurses there, they love Frankie. They're going to do everything they can to keep him alive and keep him going, work, around the clock. And the horror of that is an evil thing happened to an evil man.
Yeah. Well, it was a great story, very dark and compelling. I mean, it had to have been to bring up 7 days. I think I saw that like 2 years ago. I hadn't thought about it in quite a while. And actually, specifically, that scene you were just alluding to when I think it was the mother discovered, not to give away a spoiler, but discovered some evidence, let's say, that kind of it dawned on her what had happened. That really struck me, much like the beginning of 7 days. Mm-hmm. But I was actually talking with Josh about this earlier. I noticed you were a hospital corpsman, and you were wondering if I was stalking you. I was like, well, technically, I guess I was Facebook stalking you. So, just trying to do my research, get some information on people. Yeah. But, according to your Facebook, I noticed you are a hospital corpsman in the Marines, or at least you were, but I've been told by military guys, once a Marine, always a Marine. I also noticed that one mutual friend we have on Facebook is Guy Quintero, which makes total sense considering his military background. So I know we kind of talked about it already as far as your background as a corpsman, adding an extra layer of realism when you're writing about injuries, medical situations, or the human body's fragility. So did that expertise ever do anything in the realm of influencing plot twists or character development?
Absolutely. I was a Navy corpsman for 14 years, combat medic with the Marines. I went to Iraq and
thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. Josh was also military, Air Force. I think he went to boot camp online though. And
office, get it right.
How did I miss that part? Oh, okay.
So Josh and I, our dad was actually in the Navy as well back in the day, and actually fought in World War II, if you can believe it. Josh and I are actually older than we look. Our dad was born in 1923. But as a hospital corpsman, learning, anatomy, physiology, learning about the way the human body works, and then also just how wounds happen. And in this particular time frame, when I was looking and researching, I was like, well, this is about the same time that they started introducing oxygen lines. And even though it would take a big buildup of oxygen in that ward for it to be lit on fire from somebody lighting a cigarette, because of the evil nature of everything that kind of had a paranormal aspect to it, caused the in the reader's imagination, a fireball to happen right there when Frankie lit up a cigarette. So, and they were allowed to smoke inside back in the 1950s, so it was very common. Even in a hospital ward, and not even thinking about the buildup of oxygen. So I was trying to go for definitely a medical aspect there, and then just thinking about the most intense pain that somebody can be in to die from is probably being burned to death. The most amount of pain to intact nerves, and definitely had a role to play in this evolution of the story.
Well, I understand what you were just talking about. When you have a story where there's a supernatural element, suspension of disbelief is allowable, I guess, for lack of a better term. But when it comes to something like your standard written fiction, or maybe just kind of your standard action film, does your medical knowledge, or I imagine you've probably got some knowledge regarding explosives, does it ever drive you nuts when you see something that's like way over the top, or are you just like, oh, hell yeah, bigger explosion? Or are you like, that would not happen in real life? That is stupid.
Yeah. Any medical person would probably tell you the latter on that one. It's just like you see things and you're like, oh, we don't do it like that. What? They're not even doing actual CPR. They're not pressing deep enough on his chest. That's not what a burn victim is going to sound like or look like after. Josh will tell you the story, but I actually pulled a guy that was burned very badly, 80% of his body from a burning truck in Iraq. So I can tell you I had nightmares for weeks afterwards of smelling burned flesh. And that's another of the olfactory things. It's amazingly like the smell of burned pork. And it definitely had an impact on how I described Frankie and what he went through in that story.
Nothing like a writer having real experience of burned flesh and explosions to rock you to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Hey, you were involved in your own crazy stuff too, bro.
Well, do you think your military background helps you create more grounded, disciplined characters, or does it push you to explore more chaotic and unpredictable aspects of human behavior? And the reason I asked is because in this particular story, one of the things I noticed was you highlighted the detail of Frankie's shoe shining routine. I mean, even down to, what was it, saddle soap, I think, that he used?
Saddle soap, mink oil, and Josh will tell you, my Sunday routine used to be to polish all the boots, and when not only my military ones, but I used to be a very avid country music dancer, so I would polish those boots as well, and it's just something very therapeutic and cathartic for polishing boots. The smell, the feeling of accomplishing something that people have been doing very well for their own boots and stuff for decades and so long, and definitely appropriate for the time period of polishing the boots, and how much it just showed the level of detail that Frankie took in his life, and the things that kind of built him up and made him him. So despite the fact that he may have been disciplined and orderly, there was a very evil aspect to him in the story. And you could see that even though he could polish the heck out of a shoe, he was definitely a bad man.
He was trying to scrub away the guilt.
That's good. I might steal that.
Well, not to belabor the point, but I find it interesting. Tell me about being a corpsman as far as you're like a medic, correct?
Oh,
is that
definitely.
right? Okay.
Yes, sir. And in fact, when I after my 14 years were up, I actually became a civilian paramedic. And my main job right now is I run a first aid training program with I have 30 instructors under me, and for a very large construction company, which is the closest I found to the military since I've been out in 2011. And yeah, I would be, one day maybe out there on convoys in Iraq. I was in 29 Palms, California for a couple of years and worked a clinic. So there were times that I would be nothing but medical records, immunizations, an STD counselor. I would have to go start IVs and put on 12 lead EKGs, and then I would end up I don't know, working and sitting in on a pap smear or something like that. So as a medic, you get a wide range of experiences, and basically your scope of practice is whatever your doctor says that you can do. And without tooting my own horn, I was a pretty good medic. So I have a very wide range of experiences to draw from the medical field.
So how advanced were some of the things? I mean, were you criking?
When you say cricothyroidotomy, I got, oh my gosh, he is using the correct terminology. Most people say a tracheotomy. No, it's a cric. It's a cricothyroidotomy. And I used to train officers on how to do that on dead goats. So I've had a lot of interesting experiences in the medical field, and you never know what you're going to do day in and day out in the military, and it does make you a pretty good candidate for when I went through paramedic school down here in Florida. And on my ride-alongs, I always got invited to stay for dinner and got to do some pretty advanced stuff even as a student. So, and then it was just a quick jump from that into being a construction medic and some of the things that we were allowed to do on our sites and everything to keep things from becoming big issues for the company. So it's we're all a sum total of all of our experiences and parts, and I feel like Josh and I have probably had more than most. It seems like.
Well, did I see something about you being a bodyguard?
I was a bouncer for a long period of time. I was a nightclub manager for about a year. And then I was a bodyguard at one point for Miss America. And
really?
Down when she was in a parade in Delray Beach. For a few other actors, the guy that played in Hot Tub Time Machine, he was the one who, he invented Lugal. Like Google, but Lugal on Hot Tub Time Machine. I got to bodyguard for him. Did some stints at the Versace Mansion as well as downtown Fort Lauderdale. So got to meet some pretty famous people. Got to be bodyguards for Jason Alexander, for Rampage Jackson.
Jerry?
Yes, sir.
That Jason Alexander?
That Jason Alexander.
Okay, just wanted to make
sure. It was just for a night, but
why did he
I still have it on my
scream
resume.
Out Jerry?
He was definitely that guy.
Awesome. Well, it was a great story. And like your brother said, we definitely look forward to more of your writing.
Thank you.
So, Caleb, your story, Secret Testing Lab, is set in the hospital's history at a time when I assume it was functioning as the, quote, regular hospital. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. However, there was a room at the basement level past the morgue where experiments took place, which were rumored to be kind of the vein of Dr. Mengele. So the unethical doctor had a physician's assistant with him whom he had chosen and admonished to keep what she witnessed highly confidential. I think the exact word he used was discretion. But when it comes to executing a prisoner, A doctor confirms that the person is dead, but doesn't administer the lethal injection because doing so would violate the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm. So she was selected because the administration of anesthesia was involved. But what about her made the doctor feel that she would go through with what he asked her to do? And what made him think that she could or would keep quiet when she found out what they were doing?
And this was a good question. I was kind of rolling it over in my mind when I read it when you sent it over previously. I think that there's a bit of power dynamic going on. The physician's assistant is getting involved with this doctor who obviously within the hospital administration has a lot of power, power enough to have his own lab where he can conduct these sorts of experiments without really being questioned. So I kind of saw the physician's assistant as like maybe a little opportunistic, or taking the opportunity to kind of boost her career a little bit, and the doctor kind of using that as like leverage to keep her quiet.
Yeah, so not exactly blameless.
No,
Yeah.
definitely
The
some
morally
gray.
gray.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Well, so what was the condition of the patient? They describe him as 83 years old and having gone nonverbal long ago, but the story makes it seem as though he was alert and oriented. He was just sort of trapped in his body.
I kind of saw it as like pretty aggressive, like Alzheimer's. But the alertness comes more. So the reason that they're applying or administering this anesthetic is to kind of like study his brain waves as he's asleep to see if there's any kind of way to break through that block that Alzheimer's or dementia creates, to see if there's still like some active brain waves that they can use to, I don't know, just research. It really was just kind of a research thing that they're going for, to see if, there's any further steps that they can use to treat that condition.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. Like, when you get those stories where the greater good is involved with experiments, because there's all sorts of crazy stuff that's gone on in that vein. I think probably most notorious was the Tuskegee experiments.
Yep.
Things like that ever cross your mind when you were inspired to write this story?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Mangala. Obviously, there was some horrible experimentation by the Nazis. But there's still like medical applications that were used from those experiments still valid today, which is, a horrifying thought to process. But it's funny that you had mentioned Mangala in particular. That was the main inspiration that I was kind of tapping into for that character. Kind of well, I'm doing an awful thing, but I'm gonna justify it because I think that I'm going to make this great, amazing medical breakthrough.
Mm-hmm. Well, so in your story, much like Josh's and Jason's, I wanted to know what the conceptualized afterlife is and how it relates to your own beliefs. Because I don't know, I just like when I notice that the afterlife is involved when it comes to ghosts and there's like these laws in place or this way that it functions, I'm always curious to know, first of all, if I'm missing anything, do I understand the dynamics, and if it comes from some actual belief that the author has?
Sure. I 100% believe in an afterlife. And I believe in heaven and hell, but I don't think that we can possibly understand what exactly that is on this plane of existence. That sounds like some like ethereal mumbo jumbo, but like I think that the most defined realization of hell is something that we actually create while we're still living, which is kind of like what gets revealed in that character that they're experimenting on is like, oh, this guy is already kind of living in hell, trapped in his own body because of, the decisions that he made prior to this moment in his life. He's, spoiler, the subject turns out to be just as awful a person as the doctor that's experimenting on him.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that Caleb had the best ending line in the book. That last line where she's like, "Please don't follow
yes,
me."
yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh God! When I first read that, because I don't read the stories up front. Heather does that. I read as I'm formatting. I'm usually formatting late at night in this regard, so it's real spooky. And I got to that last line, and I felt like legit chills when I read that. And I don't get that a lot. I think like Mur Winnery is one of the main writers that's ever kind of triggered me with a physical response. And that last line of that, and like the fear in those few short words, I was like, ugh, he got me.
That totally feeds into what we're talking about too, of like the creation of your own hell, like this awfulness, like the physician's assistant makes these decisions that kind of create an awful, horrible reality for herself, to where she has to question, are these spirits going to follow her away from this place after she's compromised her own values?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you left it hanging like that.
Knocked it out of the ballpark. Wow.
So you just typed those last words and did like a mic drop.
Yeah, I 100% love to hear that. It's frustrating but chilling for people to finish a story of mine. That's kind of a specialty of my writing.
Well, it was a great story, and it's a great example of what I read in your bio as describing that your stories often focus on the dirty secrets behind closed doors. What draws you to that particular premise?
I don't know. I had a very idealistic childhood. I'm a suburban kid. But I feel like you knock on enough doors in the suburbs and you go through, and you break through those smiles of everybody behind those white picket fences, and you start picking up these, morally gray stories. It's not all well manicured lawns and, perfect cookie cutter houses. There's darkness there. So that's always appealed to me. And, my childhood was idealistic, but I had neighbors and I knew people growing up where it looked idealistic on the surface, but you dig a little bit and there's definitely some darkness there.
That whole description, the idealistic childhood, the suburban, well manicured lawns, everybody smiling and waving, all that kind of stuff. Have you seen Blue Velvet?
Oh yeah, yeah.
The David Lynch.
That's
I was thinking about that opening
my
scene.
favorite David Lynch movie. That's perfect. That's a perfect analogy. Walking down a wonderfully maintained suburban street, and then you find a dismembered ear. That's the kind of stuff that really perks my interest a bit.
And you turn around and Dennis Hopper's huffing whippets or something.
and Ben, just a little bit of background. So Water Tower Hill signed this amazing writer named R. Kenward Jones, Ron Jones, who was an ex-Navy intelligence officer and now is a therapist. And that just happens to be Caleb's dad. And he wrote a story called he wrote a story called Face in the Grave that we published earlier this year in June. Fantastic thriller, mystery thriller, and the genes of brilliance run deep in that family. And we love having the families. Like we have 3 father-son teams at Water Tower Hill, including me and my sons. I have 2 of them that work with me, and Caleb and Ron. It's so amazing because they have a beautiful family. His mom and his dad are amazing. But then you read Ron's stories and you read Caleb's stories and you're like, man, as idealistic of a life that they have, and they so much love and wonderful there. They have this imagination that's just, and we're all benefiting from it. So we're publishing
Caleb is
several
Ron's
books
son.
Yeah, Ron and
Oh,
Caleb.
so you're in the video where he's opening the box in the den.
Oh, I was the one taking that video.
You're talking about.
Yeah.
I've seen that video. That's awesome.
Yeah, and where you hear the little girl in the background, and Ron's like, "Rainy girl, what are you doing?" That's Caleb's daughter. So
yeah,
it's all in the family.
Ron's like, it's a real book. It's a book. It's awesome. And Josh was telling me about it. The whole thing caught on the cell phone, the money and the mafia.
Water Tower Hill. That on the subject of it's a book. You guys, our team, because I'm with them now. We're producing a product that is second to none, really. The books that Water Tower Hill are making are just really incredible. Not least of which,
that's that man in that Scully cap right there. That's all him.
Yeah, I mean, you guys all have copies of Hospital of Haunts, and that's proof enough right there. And I can tell you that effort goes into every single book that Water Tower Hill is putting out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to be cast in that whole pool of indie writers, and everybody's books have the white pages, and it's just, Amazon printed it and stuff. And so being a technical writer and an engineer myself, it's very easy to reverse engineer big 5 books to know why they do what they did and how they do what they did. And then we're able to take a book, like Hospital of Haunts. This is the limited edition. And I don't know why people don't put extra effort and stuff into it. But then, you open it up and you get all the little stuff with the stories. And I just don't understand, if you're going to do something like a publishing company, you don't do it to the level of the top of the industry you're in. So you can put our books up next to a Random House book, and you won't see, as far as quality and professionalism, any difference.
100%.
I mean, people throw around the term hero all the time, and no, I think you do an amazing job, Josh. I really do. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, and a lot of people also only became aware of Water Tower Hill this year, and they don't know it was 5 years of research and writing my own books and seeing, like, can a guy get into do a Barnes and Noble book signing as an indie author? Hell yeah, he can. And then I put some of my own experience as a businessman behind Water Tower Hill, married a world-class editor and big name in the horror industry herself. And together, as Caleb said, we're putting out a product that's becoming very well known.
Gotcha. Well, let me redirect back to Caleb. Since we were talking about an idealistic childhood, what draws you personally to horror as a genre? Was there a defining moment? I guess I'm asking, who hurt you? No, I'm just
he looks like his name, Stephen King's sons.
Yeah, you do have a striking resemblance to Joe Hill. Yeah,
I get that quite a bit. I do have definitely a resemblance of Joe Hill, and Joe Hill's father is the man that did it. When I was about 12, I got a copy of Salem's Lot, and I read the pages where the kid's deceased friend is floating outside the window and just tapping and asking to be let in. It scared the hell out of me, and then I figured I wanted to start doing that to other people, because it was unfair that it was just done to me. I needed to do it.
Retaliation. That's it.
Yeah. So I've lived a life of spite towards Stephen King, because I just wanted one-up him. That's ambition right there. I want to scare people like Stephen King scares people.
Vince, I know Joe Hill personally, and I have spent time with him. And you know how you can feel a vibe from people? You get close enough, you can kind of tell. Like, Joe Hill's the kind of guy that he'll be in a public setting and still have his jacket on and nobody's talking to him. He's kind of standing in the corner. Caleb has the same damn vibe. You can put both of them, they are kind of the same people years apart. They really are. And their writing style is also, to me, very similar.
Yeah.
Well, Speaking of ambition, is writing your day job in some form, or is it just a passionate hobby?
I mean, the goal, and some people might call it a pipe dream, but I don't know. Water Tower Hill is making it closer to a reality. I think is for that to be the job. I love it. I do it every day. I like Josh was saying, I got a young daughter, so I got pretty early wake up calls, but the passion is there. So my wake up call comes before that. I wake up about an hour before the baby wakes up every morning. Hit the keyboard, try to get as much written as possible. So right now it's not my day job, but that's the dream.
Work ethic. I love it.
I could hear the tired dad in his voice.
That's no joke.
Speaking of children, for instance, maybe go around the room and we'll start with Caleb. Go Caleb, Jason, and Josh. What is the life of Caleb Jones like outside of writing?
It is normal in the very best sort of way. I work a 9 to 5 that is not the most exciting thing in the world, but it keeps the bills paid and helps out with the family. And then when I'm not doing that and I'm not writing, I'm spending time with my wife and our baby, and all the important people have been told. So we're also expecting another baby in May, so that's exciting. So I'm a family man pretty much. So to answer your question, like succinctly, is outside of writing, I'm pretty much a family man. That's what I do.
All right, Jason, kicking doors in. No,
no. Catching flights. I travel quite a bit for the company that I work for. It's a large construction company, multi-billion-dollar company, and I was a safety manager on multiple solar power plant sites for them, and then I ended up getting into corporate for them, and all I do is teach now. So I'm in the training and development department of that company. I teach a lot of heavy equipment operator, rigging training, everything related to the field. But my bread and butter is the first aid. So I've been a first aid instructor for a long time for them, and now I run the first aid training program. So just a couple weeks ago, I was in New Orleans. A week before that, I was in Dallas. I have. I'm usually calling Josh from somewhere across the United States, all as far west as Colorado and Arizona, and then as far northeast as Virginia. I go to, and then I have an amazing fiance. She is just getting through life, rescuing one animal at a time. We have a whole menagerie of animals in the house.
menagerie.
Yeah, and
if he wasn't going to say anything about it, I was going to.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. It's getting into the ridiculous numbers. The crazy. I'm definitely marrying the hot crazy cat lady, and this is my first foray into the literature world. I've always been a outsider looking in and love reading. And Josh gave me the opportunity to write. He kind of dragged it out of me, actually. He's like, "You're going to write a story for this Hospital of Haunts." And I was like, "Josh, you know my very busy schedule. I'm on the move all the time." And he goes, "Nope, you've got the background for it, and you've always wanted to write, so you're going to do this. And hopefully get some more opportunities in the future." It's kind of, lit a fire under me. I've Josh mentioned earlier, I've got a lot of ideas for different stories. He and I have talked about writing two sides of a fantasy war, where I write one side of the war, he writes the other, and we're brothers. So it would be literally novels would play off each other. You'd have to read both novels to get, or both sets of novels to get the full story. But we've had all kinds of ideas other than that as well. I love the psychological thriller aspect. I've read a lot of Stephen King. I remember Josh and I, some of our first novels were Skeleton Crew, or I remember The Mist. Oh, that story, or The Raft. Those were incredible growing up. And Josh says he doesn't have horror chops, but he's read a lot of horror as in addition to fantasy. But our first love is always going to be fantasy. Besides that, I draw a lot, and I also have been thinking of the future, what I would like to do with my own certifications and things like that, and past that. I work a lot with apprentices in the solar field and get to train them and stuff. So I got a very fulfilling job there where I can help grow people to be better at what they're doing. And Josh has just got me thinking more and more about writing and getting on there. So I am definitely intrigued by all of this, and I could not be more proud of my little brother, who started it from nothing and from a very dark place, grew this amazing company and has developed another family besides the one guy that's been in his life, and he's got an amazing wife. I love her to death, and I'm just humbled and grateful to be a part of all of this.
Awesome.
I'll send you the check in the mail for saying all that nice stuff.
It was exactly how you wrote it too, bro.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well
Verbatim.
done, actually. You kind of played around with the animal thing, but yeah, no, that was about it, all of it good.
Oh, I was chasing a stray dog an hour before this, crawling through a canal and up and down vegetation in the back canal, and totally soaked to the skin after prepping for the hurricane all day. So,
well, how about you, Josh?
I mean, I don't want to throw around that everybody says Heather and I are the hardest working people in the book industry, but we have some long hours. So I still do have a day job. I retired from Department of Defense work a couple of years ago, and I took a consulting job since then. And then it was only going to be like I only need to work an hour a day, and I can do Water Tower Hill. But it's turned into promotion and more responsibility, and it's very difficult to like put the pause button on your career advancement. I'm only 45, right? But so I'm a consultant for OPM, which is the HR wing, the IT wing of the federal government. I have all the secret clearances and all that stuff. That's on this computer. Well, this desk, and then this desk over here is all my Water Tower Hill work.
I was going to wonder if you mentioned your setup.
Yeah, I have a L-shaped
the writing setup, the government setup,
yeah. And so when the herding cats at the federal government gets me overwhelmed, I move over to the Water Tower Hill stuff. And I've never worked a day in my life at Water Tower Hill. It's my passion, my dream, my love. If I wasn't married to Heather, it would be my only love. But yeah, so just so that you know, Water Tower Hill, in its first real year of hanging a shingle, we hit that $10,000 profit margin where you can get outside vested interest in people investing in your company. We've had several number one books this year. I'm publishing my 7th novel in December. My wife wrote several novels that we republished and then published her newest one. Obviously, the HOH anthology is what we're here talking about. You have people like Clay McLeod Chapman and Gage Greenwood and Kat Scully, Mark Rainey and Jeannie Rector that are all working with us in the horror community. And we have literally the best of the best in that literary world willing to be a part of this thing that we're doing. When we go to author cons, people know who we are. Like I said, my son was just tickled pink that he kind of got some fame there because of his dad. And I'm not trying to brag, but it's the hardest work to get to that point. 5-6 years in the dark, building and researching. Our books are in Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, BAM. We're about to do a whole mailer list of getting into 2,200 small and medium-sized bookstores. I just had a conglomerate of 15 indie bookstores reach out to me today to buy my entire library. So Water Tower Hill takes 25 hours a day to run. And because it's my passion and my love, it doesn't feel like work, but I'm up before the sun. I go to bed really late. I try to write. I'm working with authors who you have to talk off the ledge every day because they think they're imposters and they're not selling books like they want to and stuff. And we have the whole family Discord, 32 people in the Discord group. We have employees, we have contractors, we have distribution systems and printers and international rights holders and stuff. So it's a full-time job for 6 people. And yeah, my wife and I both work it full time. And then as much as we can, like I had my son here for the last couple of days, and we just had dinner with my wife's father and his wife, and my son and his girlfriend, and Heather and I. So I'm pulling the family together. I'm making people work for Water Tower Hill. I built it with legacy in mind, and I couldn't be more blessed with the people I'm able to work with, and then take this weird gift that I have of layout and formatting, and my wife's ability to edit, and she loves to edit. We are just a dynamite setup here. So that's
Yeah,
my day.
you're honestly, you're downplaying it. If anything, you guys devote your entire lives to this and to this family you've created and your own family as well. And Josh, like I said, I am floored by how you're able to do it all. And I know you've always been the early riser. I've been the one that sleeps in more. I've never understood why you get up so early, but you know what? I can see, it's to create good things and to help people's lives with this. And you're making some dreams come true in addition to doing your own, bro.
And that's the thing. It keeps me going when like a John Cady is number 1 on the YA dark fantasy list right now. And he tried to sell that book for 10 years. And he tells me, I took a chance on him. He took a chance on me. And he's number 1. And his first book was number 1. And when they say, man, hey, bro, I love you. I'm living the dream all because of Water Tower Hill. It just keeps me going. It really does.
All right. Well, Josh, Jason, Caleb, it has been a pleasure talking with you guys.
You too, Vince. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
So as we bring the show to a close, is there anything you'd like to plug or let your readers know about? And I guess we can do it the same way. Caleb, Jason, Josh.
Other than Hospital of Haunts, my plugs are for stuff that's still a couple months out. My Water Tower Hill book novel doesn't come out until March, and that's I actually just finished writing it this past week, and it's a doozy. it's gonna ruffle some feathers, I think, but I'm excited.
All of my plugs are for my brother's stuff. His books are phenomenally written. I have the privilege of knowing a few of the inside jokes and inside things that nobody else will get in some of his novels, some of his characters. The guy wrote a chapter about me in his autobiography, and it just floored me. To be honest, it's just an amazing deal. I could not encourage his Archangel Mission series, his biography. It's just inspirational. I will tell you that Josh tried to get me to do this entire interview without wearing pants, but I am not going to. I'm not going to ever lower myself to that level. I will plug the Dallas Cowboys. I'm a diehard Dallas Cowboys. Josh is a diehard.
I'm editing this part out.
49ers fan. I bought him that hat. I bought him that hat. And he'll probably have some more 49ers themed gear coming to him at Christmas this year. And Caleb, Josh hasn't sent me my copy yet. I'm going to hold him to this. I cannot wait to read your story, bro. It sounds phenomenal. I'm a huge fan of military history and the whole story of Joseph Mengele and the stuff that he did, the laboratory in Japan. There's a crazy amount of medical things information we gained from World War II, and people got away with it scot-free. Mengele managed to escape through the rat lines, and I tell you, I'm very intrigued by it. And Vince, I thank you for the opportunity.
I have your copy in here somewhere.
Oh, number 64, correct? 64 of 100, right? Josh, you got some stuff on your head that looks just absolutely weird and crazy.
It looks like champion material. Yeah.
Didn't you lose last week and we beat the Steelers? I'm just saying.
Vince, as far as I goes, you can find everything at www.watertowerhill.com. Watertowerhill.com, you'll find Caleb's information and all of his links. Everybody can purchase all of the books. If you purchase either mine or Heather's, we'll sign them before we send them to you. We have signings for all of our authors around the country. We have a very busy 2025 coming up. I have my 7th novel and 6th missions book coming out in December, least of these. We sold more sets of the Water Tower or of the mission series at AuthorCon than any of our other books, including Hospital. So it was a shock that I sold dark fantasy at a horror convention, but it's picking up traction. I really enjoy that series. But watertowerhill.com or Joshua Lloyd Fox everywhere on social media. We're out there everywhere. Heather Daughrity is my wife, and you can read our entire story and why we started Water Tower Hill and what we plan to do in the future at watertowerhill.com.
Awesome.
Such a great name too, Josh. We lived underneath that water tower for years, and the fact that you allude to it, and I look at every time I see your logo, it's just like that's home. Yeah, pretty awesome.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, gentlemen. Listeners at home, both live and on demand, and everybody in the chat. All links are in the description. And Josh, Jason, Caleb, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you much.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can watch the episodes live. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest writers and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.